Commissioner, you're free to begin.
Thank you very much. Okay, good morning. I'm calling this meeting of the Trees and Green Infrastructure Committee meeting to order at 10 a.m. Wednesday, February 17th. We have almost a full house this morning of members, but I'll do the roll call. Francis Market.
Here.
Andrea Hoffman.
Here.
Joan Flaherty.
Here.
Bob Van Horn.
Here.
Elise Burns.
Here.
Terry Eskew.
Here. And
Commissioner Richard Byrne.
Here. Good morning.
We seem to be missing Katie Downs. She might join us later, but and she's not here. And Liz Lingo was here. There was a little block on the screen of her 2 minutes ago. She's supposed to be joining us also. And then we have a guest joining us to talk about the tree tenders program, which is on our agenda. Suzanne Rowland will be joining us momentarily, and we'll get to that as we go on the agenda. Let's see what's next. Approval of minutes. As you know from the email I sent out yesterday, but I'll just say this in case anybody's watching. We're catching up with a bunch of old minutes because we had none as of the beginning of this year from all of our time together back to 2018. So as a requirement of state code, I have to do them all, and I'm trying to catch up. So, the committee members had to vote, and I need a motion to approve. First of all, does anybody have any changes or comments on the ones I sent out yesterday? They were from May, June, July, and September of 2019, and then the excellently written minutes of our last meeting on January 8th by Joan Flaherty. So it was 5 sets of minutes. And I did get one small correction from Andrea that I will add to the May ones. Otherwise,
I'd make a motion to approve, but I need to, I wasn't going to vote for the ones that I wasn't attending. So if you're going to do them separately or whatever.
okay, well, yeah, I guess we're going to have to then, because in fact, we've got Joan, let's see, you actually appeared as a member of the audience at, I think it was the September meeting, but I can't remember when you joined the committee. So I think it was after that.
It was after that.
Yeah. So then, all right. So yeah, I guess we'll do them separately. Somebody want to make a motion? Or Monkey, which ones did you miss?
Just the September one.
Okay. So then can we do May, June, and July together?
Sure.
Okay. Then in that case, then Joan and Bob would not vote on those because they weren't on the committee then. Yeah. Correct.
Susan, I missed the June meeting.
Okay.
I missed the June and July meeting.
Can we can vote to abstain?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's just do them separately. Somebody want to make a motion for May?
I'll make a motion for May.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay. For June?
I'll make a motion for June.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Abstain. Abstain.
Okay. July?
Make a motion to approve July.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Opposed? Abstain. Okay. September 13th, 2019. Motion to approve.
I'll motion to.
Motion.
Well, I'm going to vote. I'm just going to motion. We're going to vote on it, right?
Yeah, we'll vote. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
I'm abstaining.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Okay. And the last one, the most recent, which is everybody votes on this one, meeting held on January 8th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
Vote to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? No, abstain. Okay, everybody was there that day.
We're good.
All right, thank you very much. I'll try to have 3 or 4 of these at every meeting. The worst ones are going to be when I have to go back and do all audio, because before April of 2019 it was only audio, and
Oh no.
Oh,
it's really hard to do.
Oh boy.
Okay, correspondence. I don't know of any. We didn't get any officially through the city, and I didn't get anything specifically, so no correspondence. The next thing is update by chair, and you'll see on there that I mentioned 2 very important initiatives tree ordinance revision in the Baltimore, Wilmington Avenue streetscape. But before I get to that, or probably as an intro to that, I just want to spend 2 minutes um, telling you some things that I thought really came together as a result of doing the minutes. I mean, I have this philosophy anyway that things happen for a reason. And doing the minutes really did give me a fresh look at everything we set out to do and all we've accomplished.
Yeah.
What was one of the things that was most interesting about it is very early on, we had these tactical discussions about a path forward, and we zeroed in on 3 areas. One was design standards, which included requirements for green infrastructure and streetscape challenges. This was back, 2 years ago. We started talking about these things, even though we didn't add green infrastructure to our name until very recently. But this was part of our initial tactical discussion. The second prong of that was ordinances and enforcement, because our previous member, Sturgis Dodge, had gone on the Law Oversight Committee and was actually working on writing that ordinance. And the third prong was public support and education, which of course are our annual Arbor Day celebrations, the lecture by Doug Talamay, the wonderful commemorative tree program, and all those things, we had updates on every meeting. But some of the challenges that have come up is that as I note, changes in our membership, because when we were talking about all these design standards and the need to look forward to the next CDP to make sure how trees were covered in that, and even in ordinances, we said, oh well, we have 3 members of the Planning Commission in our group, so this is good. We don't have that anymore, not even one. Bunky and I and Jeff Trunzo were Planning Commission members, and Jeff is no longer in our group, and Bunky is no longer a Planning Commission, nor am I. So while we have 2 commissioners, Dick Byrne and myself, we don't have a direct connection to the Planning Commission anymore. So I'm hoping that as we go forward, I want to communicate. I'm very curious as to how trees are covered in the new one. The draft is due out any day, but I do think it's important for us to be reviewing what comes out and to to make sure that our topics are covered within that. But anyway, we talked about, in addition to that, we talked a lot about tree maintenance, and so today we have a program that's going to be introduced to talk more about that. One of the things I found most interesting is we talked in the very early stages of the Lake Avenue streetscape project. And at the time, we learned that 2 large trees, a tulip poplar and a linden, were going to be coming out as part of that project. And we were very disappointed. We wanted to make sure there were new trees. We said that it should be at least 5. And fast forward to last meeting where Katie Downs presented the plan for that project, and there are 16 new trees, including I forget how many canopy, but it's really a very good project, not only for trees, but for other aspects of green infrastructure.
Mhm.
I feel really good about that. I just spilled my coffee in my lap. Oh, well. We also talked briefly about the Baltimore and Wilmington Avenue streetscape, which was at that point only a dream. It had been talked about, it was in the 2010 CDP, it had been talked about for years, but it had not yet been realized. And that came up that when we were talking about the trees on Rehoboth Avenue, and because it was noted that the conditions for trees on Rehoboth Avenue is not ideal, both because of the trampling that they take from all the people in town, as well as the salt air being so close to the ocean. So all of this comes full circle now, because a task force has been formed to actually begin work on the Baltimore and Wilmington Avenue streetscape. And I'm not on the task force, but I'm going to be attending the meetings. And I think that we should work, though, as they move forward, we should work that into our agendas as well, so that we have an active role in that project, because I think the timing could not be better for us to have officially broadened our focus from trees to green infrastructure, because that project is right in front of us, and it's going to be into the city. And I do think the Lake Avenue has worked out well. And the other thing is the tree ordinance. When we get down to talking about items for future agendas, I want to come back to that, because I want to talk about how we move forward with it. And what we, whether we talk about each section or what. So we'll come back to that when we talk about future agendas. But the point of all this is to say that the minutes made me realize that we set the stage several years ago, and now these things are really coming to a head, and it could not be a more important time for our involvement. So I appreciate very much all of you being here, especially since we have full or nearly full attendance of a very large committee each and every meeting. I really appreciate it. So without further, does anybody have any comments about any of that?
I agree with you.
So let's see. So next we move into old business, but I am going to change the order, as I mentioned before we started. That rather than starting with Arbor Day, that the Tree Tenders Partnership was talked about at a previous meeting. I guess it was 2 meetings ago when Cindy Lovett came and talked about partnering with Rehoboth in Bloom on this new program. And we have a visitor today, Suzanne Rowland.
Hi.
um,
Finally.
to tell us more about this program.
Okay. I'm going to share just a little PowerPoint here. Let me see if I could do it. Let's see how this works. I don't know Ring Central so much, so.
It's just like Zoom. It's exactly like.
Oh boy, it's not sharing. You know, my MacBook doesn't like it. Okay, let's see.
Can you cursor over the bottom of the screen and see the share button come up?
You know what's happening. It's about, hang on, I got it. Will not be able, okay. All right, I think I should be able to do it now. Let's see. I changed the system preferences and I think I got it.
Okay.
All right, yay. Do you see it?
Yes.
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 Okay, yay. Sometimes these things can be, challenging. Let me see if I can minimize the photos here as I go through this. So thanks for having us. And I say us because Joan Flaherty and Elise Burns, who are members of your committee, are part of this group. And just by introduction, I'm Suzanne Rowland. I have a property in Rehoboth down on Lake Drive. But I am here right now in Florida, so I am a little bit warmer than you guys. So we are part of Rehoboth in Bloom, and let me see, I can't seem to advance this. Let's see. Okay, yes. So tree tenders. So I know Elise and Joan have been talking about this, and I've been working with Cindy as part of Rehoboth in Bloom, and so we're trying to sort tree tenders here in Rehoboth, and this will working closely with Liz Lingo, and the purpose is really to help the survival of newly planted trees, because it is hard, particularly with our climate, and any tree in a cityscape has challenges to begin with. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about who the group is. We're going to start small. We're all members of Rehoboth in Bloom. So myself, and I did the Sussex County Master Gardener program in 2019, and then Elise, who's also a Maryland Master Gardener, and these Master Gardener programs are all around. Every state has one. They've been in existence a number of years. It's part of the extension program. And Joan, I should also mention Elise is on the committee too. I see I didn't have that in here. And then Joan Flaherty is also part of this team. And then Marcia Bird is so this is our 4-person team we're going to start with. All of us have attended a tree tender training or tree steward training. And 3 of the 4 of us just in this past year did the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society tree tender program, and it's about 20 hours. So that's an important piece. I'm seeing that this, sorry, my presentation is stopping. And the whole point is we got a lot of training around tree health, planting, maintaining the trees in early years. And there's a comprehensive manual that comes with this. So we're going to work hard to make sure these trees, stay healthy as best we can. Now, when I talk about which trees, we talked with Liz about this, and we're talking about trees that are just off the 1 or 2 year planting. Okay. And usually as the city plants the trees, there is a contract that's a maintenance contract that's engaged. So we would be working with those trees that are just off that, because trees typically need a couple years of tending to be able to survive. And then there's also single homeowner trees that have been planted. We're talking about the trees by Grove Park and the 3 trees by Lake Avenue. We have not picked the trees yet. We need to walk this with Liz, and so that's what we're going to schedule. And then we're expecting to volunteer 2 hours a week with 4 people. So that's about 8 hours a week, and we'll work with this list. We'll inspect the trees. We'll mulch as needed, weed or loosen the compacted soil, and do all those trim any dead branches and any supplemental watering. So that's kind of the extent to what we would be doing here. And it's really monitoring the trees. I think that's important. We're also going to try to create a spreadsheet that tracks the trees and kind of how they're doing, the ones that would be our responsibility. Now, again, we're a small group. So right now our proposed plan is, and this is really the last slide, is that Liz would get with us to give us the list of trees, but we're going to walk the trees with her. We don't have a date for that yet. And then setting up this identification system. And as I said, tracking these trees to see how we do, see what we need. And that will also help us know how much time this takes, right? I mean, I think most of the time is actually just walking around to the trees. And then we would propose to start monitoring the trees by April 1st, assuming we can get, the first steps in place. And then, during the time of stress on the trees, if there's a particular drought season, we're going to have to be watching the weather each week and see, kind of how much natural rain there is, et cetera. But we would continue to monitor these. And then one of the thoughts we had was, if these are in front of homeowners, we can certainly engage the homeowners and possibly create some tools for the homeowners to use and maybe consider a community tree training session. I understand that has been talked about before. So any input on any of this is certainly more than welcome. And, we're excited about it. These programs, these tree tender programs run in many, many cities. I mean, Philadelphia has a huge one. And Philadelphia's is usually like the homeowner, like a group of people in that neighborhood really take care of several trees, including the planting and then following up. The city really doesn't take care of them at all. Ours is a little bit different because we'd have to work with Liz on the maintenance contracts. So that's really all I had, but love some input, and, never having been to this committee before, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Well, thank you, Suzanne. That's very helpful. Do we need the slides up, or should we go back to having everybody on screen?
I think we could go back. I could stop sharing. Hang on. Let me try to.
Can
Let
you
me
go
figure
back
out.
to the second one, the second page, please?
Sure.
This
Here.
one.
There you
yeah,
go.
page 2. I think you're on page 3 right now. If you go up one. to
Oh,
page
second. Sorry. There you go.
Let
Yep.
me just see. There was a question I had.
Yeah, I have a question about this one too.
Go ahead.
So I'm looking at the list provided by Liz Lingo, and it says single homeowner trees.
Yeah, that was my question.
On private property, or is that on the street?
No, it's on the street.
These
It's the ones that I think the city has planted, but they're in front of homes. They're randomly, throughout areas of Rehoboth.
Yeah. Because my question is, how do you plan to water trees? I mean, if you start seeing that trees are being neglected and they need to be watered, and they're they're street trees in front of someone's house, how are you going to get water to these trees?
We would be looking to work with the homeowner then at that point to help water those.
'Cause
That's a thought.
what if, especially during the warm seasons, and this has always been a big question for me. So you have a bunch of homes that renters are located in, so they don't know anything about the house. How are you going to reach out to the homeowner to, technically say, hey, we need to connect a hose to your hose, your hose bib, but you can't reach them? And that's been the one question we've had for years, is how do you get water to these trees if you can't get it from a hose bib of a homeowner?
Yeah. I think that's going to be our challenge to figure out. By the way, these are just some examples of trees. You know, we're going to have to decide if we do any of those and how many there are, right? So we may not be able to. We're just going to start out and see what we can do. We don't have a solution basically for what your question is. If we can't get a hose bib, if there's no nearby hose bib.
Yeah, because the watering is really the main issue.
Mm.
A lot of the reason trees have died on Munson Street in the past is because of lack of water. So that's the main issue, is really, really making sure that they're watered for the first 2 years when the roots are growing.
How many gallons of water do you think you need per tree per application?
Well, that's the thing, the best way to water a tree is, like they say, a very slow trickle for several minutes.
Yeah.
So basically, ideally, if somebody has a hose, they should put it at the base of the tree over the new root ball, put it on a very slow trickle, leave it on for about 10 minutes to really soak that side of the root ball, then turn it around to the other side of the root ball and let it trickle for about 10 minutes. Because what you're trying to do is really soak the root ball, not just like hit it with 10 gallons of water all at once.
All at once, right.
Soak into the root ball.
Well, does a gator accomplish that if you fill a gator bag?
Yeah, I mean, that's why they put gators on. But when the gators are removed, that's the problem. That's what I've seen. When the gators are removed, and then you still got, you still have these young trees that need to be having their root balls soaked. And that's
Terry, I think we also talked about maintaining those gator bags. And, even ensuring that more of those trees have gator bags that we would tend, that people aren't.
And we would,
to.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Is this list that you've got here, could we add one tree to it? I'm getting into Arbor Day now, but we are going to be planting either a willow or a willow oak at Rehoboth Elementary School for Arbor Day. And the location that we chose is very close to a homeowner, a family who has agreed to water the plant. We also will have a gator bag on this new tree, but I am wondering whether I could possibly add this to your list of trees to care for.
I think we probably can. Remember, we don't have a firm list yet, right?
Perfect.
So
Okay.
this is just an example, but we could certainly take
Excellent. Well, please keep
and
that
it's
in
great.
mind.
It's great that the family, clearly if if the homeowners pay attention, that's very helpful. It's just,
Yes,
obviously
yes.
with renters and things, it's
Right. So they have definitely committed to do that. Thank you very much. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
And this is a trial. We're going to give it a try this summer.
Right.
And maybe we won't do single homeowner trees this summer. We'll have enough with trees in some of these parks on some of the avenues. So.
Yeah, it really is a trial. Think of this as an experiment to see how we can do and what we learn. That's why we're keeping it small to start, right? Versus getting, I'm sure we can get more volunteers, but let's keep it small and pretty tight to figure out how we do this, to kind of create some procedures and some ways to do it. That's I think the trick.
Christine, what else I would recommend is, I know that last year when Liz planted I think it was about 50 trees, she did have a 1-year contract with Spasato in regards to keeping the gator bags filled on a regular basis, which means, once a week, unless there's rainfall during that week. If you could clarify with her, is she planning to do that again for the second year for those new trees? Because the first and second years, as you know, are very important.
Very important, yeah.
Maybe you could ask her if that's Spasato.
We've talked to Liz about those maintenance contracts, and from my recollection, they were generally a year, because there's also a warranty on the trees. But we'll go back and double check.
Yeah. And we're talking about doing things that are just off contract, right? So I don't know which trees are 1-year or 2-year contracts, but I know I think there's a mixture of contract types.
But here's the thing, it would be worth investigating for the trees that were planted and they are 1 year, now they're right off the 1-year contract. It would be really worth it to see if how much it would cost to have Spasato do the gator bags on the trees for a second year.
I see.
because that is also crucial for root development.
Mhm.
And that way it would also save you folks from having to do
Mhm.
that. And that would just be on the trees that are going into their second year. I think there were like 30 or what was it, Susan, 38 or 50 trees.
Something like that.
And th-
Well, 50 total, but
yeah,
yeah.
and that's a separate contract. That's just a watering contract with gator bags.
Mhm.
I think that would be worth looking into as far as the watering.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. And you say it's going to start this summer, Elise, right?
Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, great. Well, this is very, very interesting. I hope that maybe periodically, Elise, or you can come back, Suzanne, give us an update. I mean, it wouldn't have to
Sure.
be every month, but I'd love to hear about it a couple
Sure.
times. How it's going.
But, Elise and Joan, I assume you're sort of our contacts
Yeah.
as far as this organization is. I think it's a great enterprise. I'd like to be involved as well, although I'm not a master gardener or anything, but
Hey,
anyway.
you could take that tree tender class is only 4 weeks long. And
Elise,
Okay.
is it given in Sussex County? I too would be interested in it. Is it given in Sussex County?
Right.
the one we just took was through the Philadelphia or Pennsylvania Horticultural Society through Philadelphia. But we have heard that the Delaware Extension may start up a tree steward class, which is a more intensive class. So, I mean, we're keeping an ear on that. But as far as we know, there are no tree tender groups in Delaware.
Okay.
The Pennsylvania Horticultural Society one is pretty comprehensive, and they've been doing it online. I know, Elise and Joan, you're finishing the one now. They might be offering another one in the spring. I don't know. Because of COVID, they put I took the first one online. I think you guys are doing the second one, and they might be doing a third one, which being online, it's fairly easy to do.
It is.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It made it a lot easier than going to Philly to take it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I did it sitting in Rehoboth, so. All right.
Hey,
Yeah.
I can interrupt. Delaware does have a tree steward program that's relatively new, so they just started in the fall.
Okay.
So hopefully it went well and they'll do another round, but the last I checked there was nothing online. And then also Delaware Center for Horticulture, they're really a wonderful organization. They're up north near Wilmington, but they run a program, same sort of thing, tree tender type program as well. So if somebody's looking for something a little closer, if there are field trips and stuff, it would be better than going to Philly for sure.
Thanks, Liz.
Yep.
Good to know.
Okay.
Thank you, Suzanne. I really appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank
Thanks.
you.
That's
I'm
great.
gonna drop off. So thank
Okay.
you.
Very good. You.
Bye.
I neglected to mention at the front when I was doing the comments that we are on it as we always have been since as long as we've been having virtual meetings on a strict hour long. But we had a special meeting of mayor and commissioners last Friday where the mayor outlined a number of other sort of rules. And as I said, while we've been following them all, not every committee has, so that now there's a renewed focus on keeping meetings to an hour. So we really have, and so some things, and I expected this when I wrote the agenda, I think some things are going to have to get deferred. But I did want to get, if Andrea, can you do like a 3-minute update on Arbor Day? Because
Yes.
the reason I say that is that under new business, this discussion of the Lake Gerar Tot Lot is very
Yes.
timely because we have a budget meeting in 2 days where that's
Yes.
probably going to get decided. So I think we need to spend the bulk of our time.
I can. Okay.
Go ahead.
We're on track. I just would ask everybody, please, on your calendars, April 30th from 10 to noon. This is a 2-part program. It's about 2 hours long, and it's really a rehash. We're doing exactly what we did 2 years ago, pretty much, with possibly one exception. 10 o'clock, we will start at Rehoboth Elementary School. We will have about 140 kids, give or take. There are 2 grades, 4th and 5th. We deal with them separately. So this program runs twice. We have to do this program twice. Liz is our opening act. She welcomes people. The mayor is scheduled to read the proclamation for Arbor Day. Following that, we are going to be visited by the Director of Education for the Delaware Forestry Division, Ashley Melvin, who was with the kids 2 years ago and did a wonderful interactive program with the kids standing outside around our tree. Guest of honor this year will be a willow oak or a willow. This was the request of the teachers. And as I mentioned, it is very close to a private home, and that's why we chose this location. After Ashley does her talk with the kids, we have now a tradition. I've tried to change it, but we're going to have the boy band directed by Bunky, our very own Bunky Market, and a chorus line. Sturgis Dodge will be back. She promised me. I will be there, and I'm hoping that I can get Terry Eskew up there this year and anyone else who would like to join. I was looking for a new song. We end the program with the singing of a song, and I decided I was going to change the song, and the teachers just screamed at me that we were sticking with the same song that we had. So it all ends there.
I think we're going to punch it up a little bit. We're going to be punched.
I'm going to wear tights, right? Okay. Following the school, the outdoor, and this is all outdoors around this tree. Each grade individually will walk over to City Hall. Now, this is Plan A. On the second part of this program is an art program. It is sponsored by the Forestry Division. The 4th and 5th graders will be drawing pictures based on a theme. Trees are terrific in many wonderful ways. The Art League will be judging. We picked 2 winners from each grade to send into the statewide program, to the statewide contest. So on March 17th, the teachers will walk the 4th grader and 5th graders work over to the Art League. They will judge and pick 2 winners. On April 29th, the Art League and I will be hanging the kids' art in City Hall. I'm not sure how long it's going to stay up, but it'll be up for a couple of weeks. We will have a ceremony with each grade coming through. They walk in the front door, they look at their art. We announce the winners of their grade, and then we sing the song one more time, and the kids get their pictures taken. They grab a cookie and they walk out the other door. So we have the kids come through, both grades come through, and we're generally done. We'll be done by noon. So questions. I hope to see you all there. Anybody?
Great. Thank you for taking the lead on that. It's a lot of work to put that together. We do it every year, and it's great. So
thank you.
Sounds really good, Andrea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so as I say, because of the timeliness, I think we ought to move on to new business A, which is discuss the options and impact on the Lake Gerar Tot Lot. And I don't know if you've all been following this, but in the budget for this year is a new playground at the Lake Gerar Tot Lot, and has become I guess the most controversial aspect of our budget planning this year. Partly because the plan is to extend the current playground to as much as twice the size of the one that is there now. So it does, our group is very much a voice in this, especially with the trees and with the natural environment there. And I know several of you wrote into the mayor and commissioners about it, and I know some of you have questions for Liz specifically about that. But I will say we should concentrate on the tree aspect and on the environmental impact aspect, and not on the equipment itself. I mean, it's a given that whatever equipment is put there in the final, it will be ADA compliant. We have to do that by law. So we're not really going to talk about the equipment. We're talking about the environmental aspects. So who wants to go first with either questions or comments about it?
Well, I had a couple questions.
Okay.
Because quoted in the Cape Gazette, even Liz had mentioned that any trees taken out would be replaced 2 for 1 was the quote. So my first question is, what species will exist in that area? What species of trees?
Liz, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. For some reason, my front-facing camera isn't working today. So the only camera view I could give you would be of the back of my desk.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's about probably, if we're talking native species, we have obviously less viable options than non-natives, but just to throw, and obviously, it goes without saying, without an approved project, there obviously is no landscaping design. We wouldn't do that until we had an idea of what we were going to install, time frame, budget, that type of stuff. But if we're thinking of evergreens, we have a holly, white cedar, juniper, bald cypress, loblolly and pitch pines, southern magnolia would do well. Let's see. If we're thinking deciduous, we could do sweet gums, white oaks, willow oaks, either of the red oaks, southern or northern, horse chestnut, coffee tree. A couple of smaller species that do well would be like a serviceberry or sweet bay magnolia. And then if we start expanding into non-native trees, obviously the list gets much larger.
I mean, you wouldn't be doing non-native, would you?
I mean, most of our projects, we try to focus on natives, but you also have to keep in mind that our diversity is a really important thing. So we don't want to have too much of any one species, one genre, one family. So that all gets factored in there, because in general, though, we try to keep, or at least I try to keep the non-natives more to where they're better suited, like tight street tree conditions where, if the natives can thrive in a certain area, we should use them there. There's no point in planting. Like there's a couple of Zelkovas at Lake Gerar and they do really well, but the Zelkovas do well anywhere. So why put them at Lake Gerar? We'll use them somewhere like along Rehoboth Avenue where most trees won't do well and the Zelkovas do really well.
My main question was just that I know that is such a harsh environment, and the soil there is so sandy and so, it's just really hard to work with. And that's why I was really curious as to what species, and it sounds like you have a long list. I'm not asking for a full
Oh, yeah. Well,
what could survive there in that harsh environment.
Well, it's not quite as bad as you might think, because the Henlopen Hotel provides, if you look at the angle of which the wind would have to come off the ocean, it would be very specific because of the houses along lake and the Henlopen Hotel. They block a good portion. But it would just be a little bit of, like we've had it this past year and you plant trees and you get a nor'easter. The sandy soil actually is really good for drainage, although over the years there, the soil has gotten so much sandier because of, I guess, just the general accumulation. Like when I was younger, it used to be more grass than sand. And now, we really, I hate to say it, but there's bare spots where we would have to really add back in some nice topsoil and compost to get some nutrients and retention in there.
But I guess the main point is, so you feel really comfortable though with whatever you choose as the plant material, you do feel confident as far as that planting location. They would survive with the proper care.
Yeah, like I said, like anything, there's always a little bit of that luck component to it, but it's. People love coming here and seeing the trees near the beach. And so we have to keep that up, even if it maybe is a little bit harder than planting them a mile inland.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I think the shade, I've heard a lot of people say they like, to walk the park. They like to sit in the shade, the park is very important to them for that reason, not so much for the playground reason. So
yeah, I'm
glad to hear that. And so I gather that probably no new plantings would be done till the fall, right? At least.
Yeah, that's what would make the most sense. Although I'm starting to lean this is something typically I like fall better for planting. There are some things you want to plant in the spring that seem to do better, but with the nor'easters, I'm thinking maybe spring is worth trying. So I've been playing around with that a little bit.
So one of the big unknowns or one of the big issues that's still on the table is whether or not this lot would be expanded. So I don't know if, and I mean, Liz, you can talk about the fact that it would be permeable, right? So it would be different from what's there now.
Yeah, so with if you really want truly ADA accessible surfacing that anybody of any ability can transverse without tripping and falling, you have really two options for playground. One is the fake grass, so not so much the astroturf, but the individual strands. And that's permeable too. The problem is with it gets slippery when it's wet. So morning dew, rain, but it does maybe blend in a little better because it's green. I don't know. And then the way most playgrounds are going now is the poured in place resilient rubber. So it's all basically you have a layer of gravel underneath, which we know is better I mean, that's what dry wells are, right? So that's better drainage. And then they do, forget how thick the actual recycled rubber is. And then they do a proprietary blend on top with a binder to hold it all in place. And that's what gets the color to it, is kind of that top little layer. So it's all permeable, and what's below it will be more permeable probably than what's there now, because like I said, we don't have good coverage in that area.
So Liz, follow up on that comment. I'm sorry, Susan, were you done?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about that.
So just following up on something, the company that you've been showing the playground renderings of is Liberty Parks. Have you been to the site recently with Liberty Parks to get an accurate estimate of what kind of foundation they would have to put under that rubber matting, how they would have to regrade the site, and what they would recommend as far as a foundation underneath it?
Carrie, that's all done by the manufacturer's recommendation for surfacing. It's covered under an ASTM standard, and it's pretty basic everywhere. Whatever thickness layer of gravel plus that packed in, this amount of lifts. It's a basic spec, so that wouldn't be up to the playground designer.
No, but what I'm saying is, I recently visited the Tot Lot with a CPSI and a playground planner that has over 30 years experience in this area. And when I walked, that's why I'm asking if you walked the site with Liberty, because they would have to plan the layout of the poured in place rubber. And the one thing that kept coming up, and that's why I was asking whether you actually walked the site with them, is when I walked the actual site with them.
Wait, I'm sorry. You've walked the site with who now?
Well, our committee is allowed to do research into green infrastructure versus gray infrastructure. And so what I did was, because my undergraduate degree is in landscape architecture, and I worked for a big developer for 10 years in Washington and Virginia. So what I did was I contact them just to get some background research on this poured in place rubber. Just because my own education, I hadn't dealt with it before, but I wanted to get background information. And so as a member of this committee, what I did was I was referred to some local playground planners who do work with both the poured in place rubber, and they also worked with the engineered ground cover. And both of the companies I talked to have been doing ADA compliant playgrounds. In fact, the one company works in 11 different states, and they are almost 50 years old. So they're very familiar with what goes into the planning under this poured in place rubber. And it's not just a very simple process of, like if I went out to my street, which is basically level, and said, just pour in some place rubber. The foundation underneath this poured in place rubber is essential to have a strong foundation. It has to have a certain elevation in order to drain properly. And because of the location there at the Tot Lot and the sandy soil, you're talking about a pretty unstable base. And so I asked them to meet me there because they're, again, in doing research just based on knowledge that I would like to gain about this poured in place rubber. I did have a consultation at the site, and that's why I'm wondering, they are a playground planner. They have CPSIs on staff. They have landscape architects, land planners, and specialized playground planners who specialize in ADA equipment. So that's why I was wondering, in order to get, base this on current data, I'm surprised that Liberty, being the playground planner, as part of their estimate, because they would have to give you an estimate for how much it costs, whatever size you come up with on the alternative play, they would have to come up with, and you, I think, would probably want to provide the mayor and commissioners with an accurate estimate of not just the poured in place rubber, but how it would be installed at that particular site based on the fact that it slopes toward the lake. So that's why I'm asking, when you talk to Liberty, whether they visited the site, because they're going to have to plan that layout. They're planning the actual, as you showed it in your renderings. They would have to plan the layout of the surface and the subsurface that goes under the rubber playground. So going back to my original question was, have they given you an accurate estimate on that cost? Because if the site is not completely permeable and can accommodate that particular type of surface, they will have to put a stabilizing base under it, which is non-permeable. So, and that goes back to our committee. That's why I wanted to do research on it, because there is non-permeable, there's a lot of playgrounds that have that rubber surface, but the soil conditions and the sloping requires a non-permeable base, which in that case just negates the whole, purpose of having a permeable base.
So yes, of course, Liberty, they've been taking care of our playgrounds prior to when I started at the city of Rehoboth 5 years ago. The playgrounds that were installed at Stokely and Grove back in early 2000s were done by them, and they do several visits a year here, just complimentary anyways. And of course, they are IPEMA certified for playground design. They have ADA accessibility experts on staff, and also cover several states. He was actually coming back from North Carolina the other day when I talked to him. So yes, of course, to do an estimate, they had to visit the site as well. We had the elevations and all that had been previously provided by our engineering firm. So they actually had a really accurate survey with the trees and elevations of the whole area there, not just even where the playground is.
But no, that's not my question. My question is, what I'm trying to get to is this. From what I've learned now in meeting with several experts at the site, I have learned that the slope of that land that would be, well, let me back up. So on Friday, the mayor asked you to provide an additional plan that would enlarge the tot lot. So it would either have to go to the west of the existing tot lot or to the east in order to expand the footprint. If you go in either direction, what I did was I walked the site with the topo map, and the experts that I talked to said that, and they quoted me. In fact, I'm asking them to provide this data in writing because I'm very concerned about the permeable versus the impermeable aspects of a rubber mat that is placed down, because in theory, it sounds great. Oh, sure, it's permeable. However, because of the slope of the land, what I'm trying to get to is Liberty Parks at some point, either their engineer or someone in-house will have to go to that site and provide you with a written quote on how they would excavate part of the site in order to make it the same level as the existing playground. So there would be excavation needed, and they would have to do some type of soil analysis to decide whether they could just put the mat down with the substrate is usually a type of rock treatment, but if it's not stable, they will then have to put in what they call a stable substrate, if you want to write that down, that would entail concrete, because if the land is unstable, you can't put rubber on it, because you can imagine after a couple years, you're going to have running patterns around some of these things where kids just running are going to create a groove in the rubber. And you don't want that to happen, because obviously that's a tripping hazard.
But Terry, I don't think we're going to be able to solve this in another 10
No,
minutes.
my question
So,
is,
and my concern is first of all, do we as a committee want to vote on, a preference, a statement to the mayor and commissioners about the size of the tot lot or any other environmental considerations or concerns that we have, just to state those as our preference or not? I mean, that's really the question, because the main issue on the table seems to be expanding it further into the park, having it twice the size or keeping it the size it is now, with all of those environmental concerns addressed in the process. I guess either way, we'd want all the environmental concerns addressed in the process. But that's really my question. Do we want to vote on any sort of position statement on that?
Well, Susan, I guess I'm just very concerned that the city is just beginning to discuss stormwater management and what the city is going to do to address future issues around stormwater and climate change, and that we're considering the expansion of a playground in an area that's very environmentally sensitive.
Mhm.
A study hasn't been done on Lake Gerar, as far as I know. I may be wrong on that, but we don't know the ramifications of expanding that tot lot in that sensitive area.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's why I think a lot of us have been saying we'd like to keep it the same size. Even having a playground there, maybe in the future, may not be the right idea with, rising oceans and tides. I mean, I think in a perfect world, I would prefer to see it move somewhere else. And I know there aren't many alternatives. We're lacking space in the city. I know a couple of us talked about maybe even moving the tot lot over towards the southeastern corner, where there's some empty land, more over by the VIA, maybe getting it off of that slope. But I think having it on that slope is going to be a problem in the future. I mean, I have no background in this, but that's just, from the little research I've done and the concerns I have about what's going to happen with changing climate in the future.
Well, given the condition of the equipment, it has to come out now. I mean, it's beyond its usable life and probably was last year. So it's going to have to come out one way or the other. So I guess then the issue becomes, do we want to recommend that we hold, that we wait, take it out, leave it as bare ground for a year or two till all this is sorted out? Or do we want to replace it in where it is now in kind, so that there is a tot lot there for people to enjoy, but not expand it because there are too many open issues environmentally to expand?
well, I think, to Susan, to your point, what the mayor and commissioners have requested is to get a plan on the existing footprint as it is,
Mhm.
ADA compliant, of course, or they instructed that an alternative plan be done. And I think it was at Dick's request for, I think, and the way the paper quoted it was for a plan that is 50% bigger. So I think the only two issues we need to talk about is, we know that the existing footprint is on level ground. It sits on the topo map. It sits at 10 feet, around 9.8, 10 feet. And it is level, and it is buildable, and it is ADA compliant. It is could be used ADA compliant, and actually inclusive materials could be used there. So I think the main thing we need to just vote on as a committee is, do we stay with the existing footprint, or do we risk enlarging it? And therefore there will be some type of surface disruption, and definitely tree removal. So I think those are the two things we need to vote on at this point, because that's what the mayors are going to vote. That's what the mayor and commissioners are going to vote on. That's what I'm trying to say.
So is there a need to expand it?
That would be a question for Liz.
I think we're severely getting off topic with that. That was more related to the actual playground components itself than the specifics regarding the trees and permeability, quite honestly.
Well, but I mean, but he was asking for in terms of background information, but the plan that was presented to us was to expand it to make it a playground for all ages rather than just a tot lot. And that,
Yes, because when we do just a tot lot, if we are doing an inclusive playground, we can't discriminate and say it's only 2 for 5-year-olds and we have no other inclusive or even at base minimum ADA playgrounds for anybody else. So that was our thought, that we would make this the one inclusive that any child, any age group could use. But I think Terry is correct in that the mayor and commissioners wanted a alternate. There are really 3 different things you can choose from: tear it down, seed it with grass and do nothing, expand it, or keep it in a similar footprint, which also would add possibly impermeable surfacing, because we'll have to provide an ADA access, like a walkway to that playground. And there's really I've drawn it out myself a bunch of times, as far back as a year and a half ago, trying to figure it out. And there's really no good pathway for that, quite honestly, because of the length of run for ADA before you need a landing, and then the 1 to 12 slope I guess there's no great option because of where the playground is. That being said, it's still doable. It's just something to consider as part of that.
Liz, I respectfully disagree, because like I said, I met with a planner and a land engineer at the site. I think here's what I would suggest, because we're getting to the end of our time. As I said, I met with actually 3. I met with 2 different CPSIs who are certified playground safety inspectors. They've been doing this for over 15 years. And then I met with a certified playground planner who only does ADA compliant playgrounds. In fact, he has a family member who is in a wheelchair, and he has a personal commitment to making sure that all of the playgrounds they design are ADA compliant. In fact, not just accessible, but inclusive. That's the higher standard. So what I would suggest, having done research into this, and this is not based on my opinion, because I'm not a professional, but this is based on professional opinions that I obtained in the last week, that I would recommend that from our standpoint as a committee, we vote to say that we want to stay within the same footprint or similar footprint, because it is on level ground, and that we recommend that the mayor and commissioners stay within that footprint, because if we exceed that to any great extent, you are getting into sloping ground, which will need some type of gray, well, I'll call it gray infrastructure. You're going to need some kind of retaining walls or something. Imagine you're on a hillside and you've got to either put dirt in and then you've got to hold it with a retaining wall. You've got to dig into the hillside. So either way, you're going to need some type of a retaining system, which is gray infrastructure.
Terry, I don't know where you're getting that information from. The topo, based on where we're expanding, the existing playground goes from about the low 9s up to the high 9s. And I think if you get closer to the lake, it does slope down. But if we're going west, it stays relatively level to the point where we wouldn't need a retaining wall. But also keep in mind that we usually do install, like if you look at the existing playgrounds, they have that little plastic edging around them to define the play space. But there are no retaining walls planned.
Expanding to the west, how many trees will you remove?
And expanding to the west, it should be about 5 of those Japanese black pines. There's one little cherry tucked in there too. And then the 3, I would say 5-inch London plane exclamation, I think are what they're called. And then it would stop short of the awesome lilac bush we have right there by the edge.
When I say retaining walls, don't imagine these walls. I mean, even if it would be something that would have to retain the dirt. But I think the bottom line is this: there
will be grading. Yes, if that's what you're asking. Yes, there will be grading of the land. No matter what we do, we'll be grading it for sure.
Not if we stay within the same approximate footprint. We'll have to do some minor. But anyway, getting back to Susan, your question, the main point is this. I think that as a committee, we should vote in terms of our goals and our mission as a committee. Within the existing footprint, because it disturbs, it's the least amount of disturbance for any rainwater, rain runoff into the lake when you're doing construction at that site, which goes toward, green infrastructure and making sure that we're aware of what's being disturbed. Number two, it minimizes the destruction, the removal of trees, and it is within the footprint approximately. It is ADA compliant, the highest standards, including possibly inclusive equipment, and it minimizes the expense because that land is already level. So that's my feeling.
Do you want to make that as a motion that we would vote on making those recommendations?
Yeah, because I'd like to get a letter to the MNC by Friday so they know.
We're actually officially out of time, but we can probably go. We can go at least long enough to vote on that if you want to make that as a motion.
Can I ask a question before we move?
Yeah.
The information that you gathered, would the providers be able to make a report to the mayor and commissioners?
Yes,
of your findings?
Yes, I actually have examples that I'm going to be presenting on Friday within the existing footprint.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we have a second on this motion to do a letter with these recommendations? Andrea, your second? Okay. Do we want to just do a voice vote? All in favor?
Aye.
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 You have a.
Susan, I will, as a commissioner, I will abstain.
And I should as well.
Yeah. However, let me add, this has been a really good discussion to hear. I'm continuously learning about this situation and issue. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Terry, for bringing that up. Thank you, Liz, for your input. Really appreciate that. And we are officially out of time, but I will say that in terms of the next meeting, one of the things we did not do at this meeting was to talk about our priorities for where we would all individually like to see trees planted this next year as part of the commemorative tree program. So I would like to put that on the next agenda. But we also, the mayor and commissioners are going to be starting to talk about the tree ordinance at a special meeting on February 23rd. So next Tuesday. I believe that will only be sort of an introductory. In other words, there's still plenty of time for our involvement in that. And I guess I'd like to put that on the next agenda too. I'm not sure at this point what form it would take, whether we would start going through the ordinance, paragraph by paragraph. We could certainly do that, but if we do, we're likely to spend the whole hour on it. Maybe one thing would be to get your thoughts ahead of time. I think you all have it, right? The draft of the ordinance.
Susan, I have a question. I'm a little confused. Sturgis shared a draft of the ordinance last March.
Yes,
with our group. Is it the same one? They haven't changed it?
Yeah, because Hoyt, who was chair of that committee, presented it to the commissioners in March, and then right after that, we shut down.
Okay, so it hasn't changed.
And then when we started having meetings again, they were all about the pandemic through, even the summer.
Okay.
So we really have only in the last few months gone back to having meetings about anything else. And
right,
so,
but the ordinance committee didn't go back and make any changes.
No, they didn't.
Okay.
So let me do this. Why don't I plan at the next meeting to sort of give an overview of where we are, because the commissioners will have met and talked about it. And I'll gather all the notes that I have gotten and we'll just work out a plan of how we're going to approach it from that. Why don't we do that?
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Any comments?
Susan, I shared my initial thoughts with you yesterday.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So is someone writing a letter? Is there a draft letter being written on the playground?
Terry will do something that incorporates what we talked about here.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send it to all of you.
Okay. But remember, if she does that, it's just an FYI because we can't, comment on it except in the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, then we will adjourn 4 minutes late with apologies for going
Okay.
on.
Thank you,
Thank
Susan.
you all.
We got a lot of
Take care,
comments
everybody.
today.
Yeah.